With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yulana Weeks.
Our top stories.
Brantley suggests a collaboration at the regional level to respond to mass U.S. deportation.
Caribbean leaders call for global partnership on climate change at CARICOM conference. St. Kitts and Nevis champions CARICOM unity in push to slash regional food imports. Agriculture company out of Trinidad and Tobago, in collaboration with Grenada government, distributes climate-adaptive seeds to farmers. St. Lucia lawmakers debate merits of sovereign wealth fund. Internationally, BP to slash green investment and ramp up gas and oil. Now, the details.
Premier of Nevis Mark Brantley acknowledges the United States government's decision to deport undocumented Caribbean nationals. However, Brantley's stance is that fair treatment and regional security measures must be in place to prevent the movement of criminals throughout the Caribbean.
It is important for St. Kitts Nevis and I think for wider CARICOM to come up with a plan as to how they intend to manage. I am not as concerned about managing what I would call our ordinary people, for want of better language, meaning people who might have gone up there and overstayed. I am more concerned with how you manage the criminal element. If it is the plan to clean out the prisons, for example, and send home to the Caribbean those who might have committed incredibly violent crimes in America, those who are career criminals who might be in federal penitentiary, and you say to them, well, all right, back to Jamaica you go, back to Antigua you go, back to St. Kitts Nevis you go. How do we manage that? And so I'm thinking that we really need a plan in place. But one of the concerns, of course, is how do you monitor and ensure that those individuals aren't then allowed to filter through the region.
Apart from the Organization of the Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, free movement policy, CARICOM is edging closer to settling the documentation for the freedom of movement of CARICOM nationals from June 1, 2025, as disclosed by CARICOM Chair, Prime Minister Mia Mottley, at the 48th regular meeting of the body. In Brantley's view, the deportation matter needs a unified diplomatic response by CARICOM.
So, for example, you know, we have freedom of movement in the OECS. So what if a very dangerous criminal is taken from prison and sent home to Dominica? Just drawing a reference. What will prevent him from deciding, I'm not going to stay in Dominica where people may know me, let me go to St. Kitts or Nevis, or let me go to Antigua. So I think CARICOM needs to articulate a plan and let us, the public, know what that plan is going to look like, so that we could have some comfort and some reassurance that somebody deported to Trinidad doesn't make his or her way to St. Kitts Nevis if that individual was involved in some violent crime or had been incarcerated in the United States. So we need some work, and I fear that I'm not hearing anything coming from CARICOM on this. But to me, we need a regional response.
The Premier also raised the issue of integrating deportees, taking into account their socio-economic concerns, especially those of individuals who may not have families or friends with whom they can reside or rely.
To this. Bearing in mind, however, Ms. Weeks, that our people are our people. And we can't decide we're not going to accept our people because they are our people. And a man who's from Hamilton or Hanley's Road or Deep Bay or Taba is entitled to come home. Whether he comes home willingly or they send him home, he's entitled to come home. So we have to accept them once they come to our borders because they're our people. But for me, the issue is how do you now manage and how do you integrate them? Especially some of them may not have any family here, may not have any support network here. Some of them would have left. When I was foreign minister, I had a case where a young fellow left at 5 or 6 and went to the Virgin Islands, where he was now 42. And they were talking about deporting him because he had got himself involved in criminality. And he asked a question about housing. Where you going to stay? You know, he doesn't know anybody. He doesn't, never been to St. Kitts Nevis. As after he left at 6, never came back. Now you take him off a plane at RLB and tell him, go about your business, where are you going to go? So we have to have those questions asked and satisfactorily answered. But I do believe that while it behooves St. Kitts and Nevis to have a plan, we need a wider CARICOM response as to how we deal with that, and particularly the threat of criminals coming back into the community.
St. Kitts Nevis Foreign Affairs Minister Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, speaking to the press at the sidelines of the 48th regular meeting of CARICOM, said the mass deportation situation should be immediately addressed. Douglas said Caribbean leaders and governments need to seek an early opportunity to speak with the United States administration at the highest level. For St. Kitts and Nevis, deportation matters are addressed through authorized bodies within the Ministry of National Security or the embassies in Washington, D.C., who would process the necessary information and then take appropriate action.
According to a 2020 study, climate damages in the Caribbean are projected to increase from 5% of regional GDP in 2025 to more than 20% by 2100 under current trends. Other projections estimate the annual cost of climate disruption at $22 billion by 2050. Caribbean leaders delivered impassioned pleas for climate justice and international partnership at the 48th regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM in Bridgetown, Barbados. The urgent calls come after devastating climate events have severely impacted several member states, highlighting the vulnerability of small island developing states to the escalating climate crisis. Grenada Prime Minister the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, immediate past chair of CARICOM, emphasized that the region's request is not for charity but meaningful collaboration.
We are not asking for mercy. In fact, we are not asking for sympathy. We are asking for partnership. And make no mistake about it, we have one planet. I don't know about you, but I'm sure I'm not going to live on Mars. And so it may be the Caribbean islands today, or the islands in the Pacific tomorrow, or Spain, or New Orleans, or Australia. It is one planet. And we are simply asking for partnership in tackling the challenges of climate change and in protecting and sustaining the lives, the livelihoods, and the cultures of the people who are most prone to the devastating impacts of climate change.
His country was among several CARICOM member states devastated by Category 4 Hurricane Beryl last year. This unprecedented early season storm forced the cancellation of a planned CARICOM conference in Grenada. The Grenadian leader praised the regional body's swift response following Hurricane Beryl, noting how member states quickly mobilized support.
Within weeks, they remobilized and descended on Grenada, and we were able to host the conference within less than a month of the passage of the hurricane.
Mitchell explained that this demonstration of unity provided the resilience that allowed Grenada's people to
rebound stronger, better, and more determined to confront the existential threat of climate change.
Prime Minister the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew of St. Kitts and Nevis focused his intervention on climate resilience and trade justice. On climate change, Drew echoed Mitchell's sentiments regarding the disproportionate impact on Caribbean nations. Quote, "We are among those who contribute the least to climate change, yet we suffer the most. And when it comes to getting the resources that are necessary to help us adapt and build resilience, those resources are very slow in coming," he asserted. Despite these challenges, Drew expressed optimism about regional initiatives. He particularly commended Guyana's president for presenting opportunities in renewable energy development and reaffirming his country's commitment to geothermal energy projects. Both leaders addressed the broader historical context, with Mitchell emphasizing the value of Caribbean nations and cultures in the global landscape.
If you don't think Barbados is worth fighting for, or the Bahamas is worth fighting for, or Dominica is worth fighting for, then I don't know what is worth fighting for.
Grenada Prime Minister the Honorable Dickon Mitchell. Despite their leadership in climate action and resilience building efforts, Caribbean SIDS continue to face mounting challenges that require urgent international support, climate finance, and debt relief to address the escalating impacts of climate change effectively.
The Federation is recognizing Wednesday as National Crime and Anti-Violence Day, which aims to highlight the impact of crime and violence on the young people of St. Kitts and Nevis. To mark the occasion, a series of activities were held across the Federation involving children from all walks of life. The goal was to encourage them to steer clear of a life of crime. Leaders from various sectors of St. Kitts and Nevis, including the Commissioner of Police, the Minister of Education, the Chief Medical Officers, and others, visited schools and institutions throughout the islands to speak to students. Dr. Terence Drew, Minister of National Security, addressed students at the Washington Archibald High School, urging them to be positive role models and avoid violence. He emphasized the importance of making wise decisions and resisting the temptation of negative influences.
And that really is to spread a word of togetherness, camaraderie, peace, and good relations between all of us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. In other words, I am here to bring a message with others to tell you that we care about you and we want to really see an end to anything that is not wholesome and uplifting you. We want to see an end to crime and violence.
He also advised them not to succumb to peer pressure, encouraging them to stand firm in their choices.
And so we want to say to you today that do not allow anybody to pressure you into doing things that you should not be doing. Peer pressure is real. I'm aware of it. When we did these studies, we recognized that peer pressure is one of the things that drive people to do bad things. And I want you to be able to resist peer pressure. Do not allow anybody to ask you to do anything that you know you should not be doing. So I want you to resist peer pressure. I want you to know that those who get caught up in gangs and violence, there are principally three things that happen to them. One, they either end up dead. Two, they end up in the hospital. And three, they can end up even behind bars. But even when you go behind bars, we don't want to forget you. We want to give you an opportunity still to rehabilitate and to incorporate yourself back into society as one who contributes positively.
According to the Citizen Security Secretariat, the event is designed to inspire, uplift, and educate students by introducing them to positive role models from various fields, including political figures, community leaders, influencers, and other distinguished individuals.
If there's one thing I want you to take away from what I would have said this morning, is that you are special. That is how difficult it was or impossible it was for you to be who you are today. One in more than a billion, which means it's close to impossibility. But for some reason, you are here today. And that is because you are special.
Among the presenters at the Washington Archibald High School was a group of prisoners who shared their experiences, urging students to avoid a life of crime. They convey that prison offers no real value and should not be seen as an option.
No one ever watch a crackhead on the street and say, when I grow up, I want to be like that. So the question is, why do we have crackheads in society, even though nobody ever wanted to be crackheads? And the answer to that is, when we are young, we feel like we have time to do everything we want and we don't have to care. But in reality, right now is the time when you guys have to be focused, because you could end up just like me, just like the crackhead on the street if you're not careful.
Under its 25 by 2025 agenda, St. Kitts and Nevis is positioning itself as a hub for regional food security. The Federation's moves in agriculture align with CARICOM's goal of cutting the $3.8 billion import bill by 25%. During a recent interview, Agriculture Minister the Honorable Samuel Duggins outlined a vision of intra-Caribbean collaboration, stressing oceanic connectivity over division.
Well, what I want to say is it was our tobacco and our cotton and our sugar that helped to build Europe, right? Let us build our own economies now. We are now independent states. We still have the land and the weather and everything that we had then. Let us use that to build our own economies. And that's going to come with partnership. That's going to come with the right support. And let us look at it through the lens of what connects us more than what separates us. Traditionally, we see the ocean as a separating factor. That this is St. Kitts and that is St. Croix, and we could tell that based on the separation by the ocean. What if we looked at the ocean as what connects us? And so this is our region because we all share the same connecting ocean. And that ocean can become a vessel for transport, communication, and everything that we need to remain connected. And if we look at it through that lens, we recognize that together we are an unstoppable force.
The Federation's $10 million drought resilience and irrigation project, DRIP, has equipped farmers with water tanks, fencing, and climate-smart training, now shared regionally. The newly operational poultry hatchery developed with Taiwan is key to this strategy, set to reduce chicken import by $20 million annually. Meanwhile, greenhouse villages and a forthcoming fish processing plant aim to diversify exports. It suggests that the Federation and the region in general are not just reducing imports but building a healthy, nutrition-secure Caribbean, referencing plans to supply melons and peppers to neighboring islands.
We talk about the economics, we talk about food security, but as a component of food security is also nutrition security, and that's a critical component. And so we talk about food from the idea of having food, right, but the quality of the food is also important, because you could have food that is not as nutritious as it should be, and that also poses health challenges as well as other challenges for our people. As we've seen recently, the NCDs are on a rise in the region, and we need to control that. Agriculture, NCDs, non-communicable diseases, so diabetes and the hypertensions and these type of diseases that we recognize that are killing our people more recently, more than anything else. Agriculture is one fundamental aspect how we can combat the incidence of NCDs. Having proper, organic, and healthy food is a way to combat that.
Despite setbacks from COVID-19 and inflation, St. Kitts has rallied public buy-in. Farmers reported a 300% surplus in tomatoes and watermelons this season, sold to cruise lines and hotels. The review, scheduled for July 2025, will assess the Federation's progress toward the $50 million target set in 2022 when St. Kitts and Nevis began participation in the CARICOM 25 by 2025 agenda. In regional news, agriculture company out of Trinidad and Tobago, in collaboration with Grenada government, distributes climate-adaptive seeds to farmers, Grenada Broadcasting Network reports.
Farmers Value Mart Limited out of Trinidad and Tobago, a member of the Sea Trade Association and affiliate of the International Seed Federation, has partnered with local input supplier PJ&L Enterprise Limited and the Ministry of Agriculture to deliver climate-adaptive seeds to selected farmers across the 4 agricultural districts. The carefully chosen seeds, designed to withstand extreme weather conditions and pests and diseases, will undergo rigorous testing across the island, enabling experts to evaluate which varieties perform best under local conditions. This approach helps not only to identify the ideal seeds for Grenada's unique climate, but also to equip farmers with valuable data to optimize their harvest.
Now, one of the main things we focus on is climate adaptation. So I don't know if you all are experiencing this here, but it's a significant thing where you find in the morning you have different extremes in the weather than the afternoon, and crops are no longer adapted to that very well. The varieties that we currently have, that is. So some of the varieties we have, they are climate adapted and they have more tolerances to that extremities in the weather. Also, we look for varieties with strong tolerances to different pests and disease. So, like for instance, I've seen through the farms in Grenada, the tomato yellow leaf curl virus is a significant virus for you all where tomato is concerned. Now, we have one variety that is not only tolerant but resistant to that virus. So when you have these natural tolerances, what you will find is that there's a reduction in pesticide usage because the farmer doesn't need to apply as much pesticides. Once there's a reduction in usage, we have seen that when the pesticides are used or crop protection are used, they are more effective because you're not really killing the chemistry. We have seen overall improvement and increase in the health of the produce and generally more yields and higher quality for farmers.
That was representative of Farmers Value Mart Limited, Mark Bonio. By working with the Ministry of Agriculture, Farmers Value Mart and PJ&L Enterprise are actively contributing to an island-wide experiment that will provide insights into the seed's effectiveness and improve overall crop resilience. Shaloni Joseph of PJ&L Enterprise expressed his desire to be part of this initiative.
I'm very happy to be a part of this initiative. what the farmers go through on a daily basis, especially in climate change, and I'm happy to be able to provide that through the Ministry of Agriculture in collaboration to extend that service to the farmers and to collect database so we could provide a better sustainable agriculture system here on island. And I mean, just to enhance the farmer profit margin also. I mean, climate change has been a big thing, not only in Grenada, but all over the world now. So I'm very happy to be able to provide this kind of data collection and trial system, and in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture.
Participating farmers will have access to these high-quality seeds at a reduced cost, ensuring that the most vulnerable members of the farming community can benefit from the initiative. Godfrey Francis of Windsor Farms in St. David is one of the participating farmers.
It's exciting and great. It's my pleasure to be partnering with someone to do that. Because I had, I think last month, a month before, the Chinese came with the same idea also. Right. If it's a good quality seeds and good production, well, it's obvious that my profit margin will be bigger. And once the seeds are good, they'll show you have a customer. You have a good customer. Because it's not something I'm doing part-time and seasonal. It's a year-round business.
As the testing continues, the data gathered from these trials will shape the future of farming in Grenada, helping farmers innovate and adapt to the rapidly changing climate. Christina John, GBN News.
St. Lucia lawmakers debate merits of Sovereign Wealth Fund. HTS News Force has that story.
So the Sovereign Wealth Fund is a statement of savings where the country is going to make a deliberate effort to save money deliberately so that we can use that money for future use.
The bill is really not necessary because we already have a sovereign fund.
Policymakers convened at the House of Parliament on Tuesday to debate a series of bills and amendments, with the Sovereign Wealth Fund taking center stage. The proposed legislation outlines the fund's financing and management framework. Ahead of the debate, Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre underscored its importance, emphasizing the fund's role in bolstering St. Lucia's economic resilience and stability amid uncertainty.
In the first instance, it's going to be used for mitigation against climate events. As you know, the conservative estimates say that we need about $368 million US dollars to mitigate against climate events.
Under the planned bill, the fund will receive resources from multiple streams, including allocations from the government, investment earnings, privatization proceeds, and dividends. However, opposition leader Alan Chasney has criticized the bill, calling it a duplication of efforts.
Because we already have a sovereign fund, and it's called the Economic Fund of St. Lucia. And generally, whenever you're going to have a sovereign fund, it's based on surplus revenues. This country has not had surplus revenues for a very, very, very long time.
The Sovereign Wealth Fund also intends to incorporate qualifying investments from the Citizenship by Investment Program that are funds of the St. Lucia National Economic Fund. However, opposition leader Alan Chasney has raised concerns, arguing that the SLP administration has a track record of lacking transparency and timeliness in auditing such programs. This, he contends, reinforces his opposition to the fund's establishment.
So here again, I want to make the comparison. In the Sovereign Fund Act, speaks about an annual audit. They can't even do an annual audit for the CIP program. They were a year late last time. They're still overdue this time. And furthermore, in the Economic Fund, there's supposed to be an annual audit. Have y'all or anybody seen any audit, any report coming from the Economic Fund as to how millions and millions and millions of dollars are being spent? So this government has zero accountability. They seem to be acting with impunity and above the law.
Reporters pressed Finance Minister Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre for clarity on the bill's next steps should it pass both the upper and lower house debates.
But generally, it's a statement of savings, it's a statement of investment in the future of the country.
When is this fund will be
The bill is going to be in Parliament possibly next week, and then during the budget, I'll make a statement as to how much we'll put into the fund.
So where's the finance coming up for this?
I just told you, during the budget, I will see where the money is coming from.
The opposition has raised concerns over the management of the proposed sovereign wealth fund, warning of potential risks regarding its direction, oversight mechanisms, and safeguards against corruption. They point to the need for stronger accountability and transparency measures to ensure the fund serves its intended purpose.
We now bring you these international reports.
BP has slashed planned investment in renewable energy and said it would increase annual oil and gas spending to $10 billion. The major strategy shift is aimed at boosting earnings and shareholder returns. BP cut planned annual investment in energy transition businesses by more than $5 billion to between $1.5 billion and $2 billion per year. CEO Murray Auchincloss announced the news in a statement on Wednesday. His predecessor Bernard Looney pledged in 2020 that BP would cut oil and gas output by 40% while rapidly growing renewables by 2030. But BP now aims to grow oil and gas production to between 2.3 and 2.5 million barrels of oil equivalent per day in 2030. Across the energy sector, companies that had shifted their position in response to the need to lower carbon emissions have now returned their focus to oil and gas. Senior climate advisor for Greenpeace UK, Charlie Cronick, says oil companies are no longer pretending to be a part in a low-carbon transition.
Over the last few years, 5 years, there's been a debate about whether or not the fossil fuel industry, and particularly the big oil companies, could be part of the green transition, the low-carbon transition. I think the announcement today from BP, that's been trailed very heavily, that they're abandoning their green targets, it ends that debate forever.
Fossil fuel prices have rebounded from the pandemic lows, and BP is seeking to regain investor confidence after it underperformed peers. It's also come under pressure to make transformative changes after activist investor Elliott Investment Management built a stake in the company.
To Washington now, Donald Trump has confirmed that Ukraine's President Zelensky will travel to Washington on Friday to sign an agreement on rare earth mineral resources. President Zelensky has described the deal as more of a framework and wants further assurances, particularly on security guarantees. He says the success of a deal depends on that. But a short time ago, President Trump said it's up to Europe, not the United States, to promise security guarantees. And he also said Ukraine could forget about joining NATO. From Ukraine, here's James Waterhouse.
Father, we thank you.
While Ukraine fights, America's cabinet prays ahead of their first gathering. After a fortnight of criticising Kyiv, a first sign of agreement.
President Zelensky is going to be coming on Friday. That's now confirmed, and we're going to be signing an agreement, which will be a very big agreement. The previous administration put us in a very bad position, but we've been able to make a deal where we're going to get our money back, and we're going to get a lot of money in the future, and I think that's appropriate because we have taxpayers that shouldn't be footing the bill. We'll be able to make a deal, and again, President Zelensky is coming to sign the deal, and it's a great thing. It's a great deal for Ukraine too, because they get us over there, and we're going to be working over there. We'll be on the land, and in that way, there's sort of automatic security because nobody's going to be messing around with our people when we're there.
Ukraine's untapped minerals could be its way out of this war. The US wants a slice in exchange for past and future military help. It had demanded $500 billion worth, but has seemingly come down. In return, Ukraine wants security guarantees to stop Russia breaking a ceasefire, but today said none had yet been finalised. Nevertheless, President Zelensky said there is a deal, or framework. And if down the line when deals are agreed, you don't get the security guarantees you want, would you walk away from this deal?
Without future security guarantees, we will not have really just peace, and we will not have really ceasefire, what Trump spoken about. And if we don't have it, nothing will work.
Of Ukraine's critical minerals, most are still within territory it controls. But the more valuable deposits are in the east, a large part of which is under Russian occupation. On Ukraine's path to peace, today felt more of a first step than a meaningful breakthrough. Listening to President Zelensky there is a lot of detail missing, and he is concerned about selling the future wealth of his country. But there are some who think this could be the beginning of a sizable investment opportunity.
It's business for your children, for your grandson or granddaughter. It's a great deal for both countries in the future, not for now.
Last night, 177 Russian drones were reportedly launched at Ukraine. Here, outside Kyiv, one person was killed. With scenes like this, today's negotiations have felt more like a business venture than peace talks to end this war. James Waterhouse, BBC News, Kyiv.
Let's go to Washington now. Our North America editor, Sarah Smith, is there. And Sarah, quite an extraordinary start to President Trump's first cabinet meeting. It was all broadcast live. It was more like a press conference, and one of the first and main speakers, Elon Musk.
Yes, exactly. He's not a cabinet member, but he was there in attendance addressing the cabinet. And as you say, Donald Trump, before the meeting even started, took dozens of questions from reporters in the room, which is quite unusual. And he was talking first and quite often about this deal in Ukraine. He sounds very, very pleased with the agreement he says he has struck with President Zelensky that he says will be signed at the White House on Friday, talking about over $300 billion worth of spending he says America has given to Ukraine, which is an exaggeration, and saying he thinks he'll get that much back from this deal. And money was very much at the forefront as well when the tech billionaire Elon Musk was addressing the room. He was justifying the huge budget cuts that he's imposing on different departments and saying it was absolutely essential that America saves up to $1 trillion. Have a listen to what he had to say.
The overall goal here with the Doge team is to help address the enormous deficit. We simply cannot sustain as a country a $2 trillion deficit. That's the reason I'm here. And taking a lot of flack and getting a lot of death threats, by the way. They're going to like stack them up, you know. But if we don't do this, America will go bankrupt.
Now, there have been some tensions between the cabinet members around the table there and Elon Musk as he's been taking the axe to spending in their departments and to staffing as well. And he sent out this rather controversial social media post saying that all federal workers had to list what they had done last week or they face being fired. And he talked about that again. So did President Trump, saying they needed nearly 2.5 million government workers to reply to this email so they could find out that they actually exist. They think there are dead people on the payroll, people who don't really have jobs there at all. And it sounds as though every single one of the cabinet ministers at that meeting is going to have to get their workers to reply to that email saying what they did last week to justify their wages.
As US President Donald Trump pushes for a quick end to the war in Ukraine, investors are speculating whether Western brands could or would want to return to Russia, once considered a high-growth market. More than 1,000 brands have left Russia in the last 3 years, some by selling or abandoning assets. Others had their assets seized by the Russian state and a sale forced through. Western companies have acknowledged losses totaling $107 billion in write-downs and lost revenue, according to a Reuters analysis a year ago. Renault sold its assets for just 1 cent in 2022 to Russia's top carmaker Avtovaz and would have to pay at least $1.3 billion if it wants to buy back its majority stake, Avtovaz has said. After senior US and Russian officials met on February 18th for the first time since the war, Russia's special international investment envoy Kirill Dmitriev said he expects some US companies to return as early as the second quarter, though he gave no details. The most likely to return are those who fall outside sanctions, such as retailers and food producers, while Dmitriev said he believed US oil majors that had been successful in Russia would return, quote, at some point. A senior Russian lawmaker has said Visa and MasterCard would soon restore payment services, but for now, sanctions bar financial or related energy services from being offered to Russia. Some of the world's most popular brands have been replaced by Russian imitations. The more than 800 McDonald's restaurants in the country now operate under a local brand, and Starbucks is now called Stars Coffee under new Russian owners. Some locals say they have missed Western brands.
It is very much felt. For example, Uniqlo, where one could buy basic t-shirts. I'm talking about a budget-friendly segment where most people shop. McDonald's got worse. There are no potato wedges anymore.
But others say it's been great for homegrown products.
Our local brands produce things that are absolutely no worse than Western ones.
Car makers may have a harder chance of getting a foothold again. Chinese rivals now have more than half of the market share, up from less than 10% 3 years ago. Russia controls a handful of Western companies under the guise of temporary management. This year, it has quickened its pace in seizing assets of companies with links to foreign ownership. It may take more convincing for investors to return. Shortly after the invasion, hundreds of brands issued statements condemning Russia's aggression against Ukraine. That framed their exit or suspension of business in moral terms. If a deal to end the war rewards Russia with Ukrainian territory, those companies will risk reputational damage by returning.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were:
Bradley suggests a collaboration at the regional level to respond to mass U.S. deportation.
Caribbean leaders call for global partnership on climate change at CARICOM conference. St. Kitts and Nevis champions CARICOM unity in push to slash regional food imports. Agriculture company out of Trinidad and Tobago, in collaboration with Grenada government, distributes climate adaptive seeds to farmers. St. Lucia lawmakers debate merits of sovereign wealth fund. Internationally, BP to slash green investment and ramp up gas and oil. Thank you for listening.